The first change I noticed was the ground. The fine white dust was coated on the entire cave, right past the gateway. I didn't know the origin. It didn't appear to be from any sort of mineral or rock that I had encountered before. It was strange, but then, given the nature of the rest of the cave, that made it almost normal. The darkness grew progressively thicker as we advanced. I noticed that we were running low on flares, about only 20 each. It was a problem, but not one that I was particularly concerned about considering the current predicament we were in. Ashley hadn't made any noise besides his original scream. It concerned me far more than if he had kept screaming. There could be a logical reason for him not screaming. Perhaps he ran deeper into the cave. Maybe he was conserving his voice, I thought. But I was throwing up improbable answers to cover my fear. My true thought rose to my mind. What if whatever made him scream stopped him from doing so again? I felt sick. Ahead of us, not even 100 meters from the gateway, was a crossroads, the first such divide in the otherwise linear path. I had appreciated the lack of divergent paths so far because it meant that we didn't have to divide our group, stunted as it were. Appearing now, as it had, seemed like extraordinarily bad luck on our part. Seemed like. That's the key point. Nothing in this godforsaken cave has been left to chance. Lost in my grim thoughts as I was, I didn't notice the object ahead of us until Alex exclaimed and ran towards it. Startled, I looked up. Alex blocked my direct view of it. All I knew of it, apparently, was that it was quite large. I ran towards it. It was Ashley's backpack. Ripped and torn. Blood covered it, and the immediate area in irregular patterns. Beside me, Alex stepped back tentatively, lost for words. Something attacked him, tore the pack right off of his back with incredible force. It must have injured him as well, judging by the blood, I said quietly, surprised at how clinical and calm my assessment of the scene had been. That's it. I'm out. I'm going, Alex said, turning away quickly, but not before I saw the fear in his eyes. He was terrified. Samantha nodded in agreement, turning to leave as well. I didn't try to stop either of them. They would be back. You won't get a foot past the gateway, I called to them, certain that it would prevent them from leaving. I turned back to Ashley's pack slowly and began searching through it, taking out a few items. I hesitated when my hand landed on the flare gun, but I took it and kept it in my hand. I knew from experience against various types of wildlife that it made an effective weapon. If I met anything that wasn't Ashley, I would fire without mercy. I stood and chose the right-hand passageway. I didn't feel scared anymore. In fact, I didn't feel anything. Adrenaline was coursing through my system, leaving no room for fear or anything else. It grew progressively darker. The darkness was thick and cloying. As a lifetime asthma sufferer, it reminded me of when I needed my inhaler. I knew the flares would soon be useless, regardless of whether they should have been effective. Beside me, I noticed scrawling in the dust, apparently of human origin. That, at least, was no mystery. I glanced at each in turn, almost mechanically, knowing that it couldn't be any worse. It appeared that we weren't the first people to stumble into this place. I have seen it, and it blinded me. This is its domain, taller than any human. Suddenly I stopped. The last was different from the others, in lowercase, and appeared to be freshly written. It cut me. I'm running for my life. Ashley's writing. And then, as if by magic, I heard two things. A scream and a roar. Ashley. The jackal. And they were close. I ran forward. I felt, rather than sensed, that I had reached into a massive cavern. To prove my theory, I impulsively punched the air to my right. If I was still in the claustrophobic cave, my hand would have surely been shattered on the wall. As I expected, I hit nothing but the stagnant air of the cave. The flares provided nothing more than a dim glow. I looked at it in horror as the glow faded slowly. The fading light represented my last defense against the virulent darkness of the cave, and its sole inhabitant. The inhabitant some called the Jackal. The light faded completely. I was alone. The moment I heard the voice. It was flat and terrible and loud. It reverberated around me, seemingly without a source or direction. I spun in the darkness, the cloying, constricting darkness, and felt my heart in my throat. I knew that if I walked backwards, I would no longer find the passageway that had led me into the lair of the Jackal. Once you've entered this central cavern, there was no leaving it. Just like the carvings promised, I thought.
"This is my cave,"
it bellowed. I screamed and ran. It was a futile attempt. The voice boomed around me, terrifying in its alienness and its flat, expressionless quality. The Jackal was not human, nor was it even some revenant or ghost of a forgotten culture. It was something that had no place in this universe, and something that I wished never to see. My heart thundered in my chest, and my eyes vibrated. I could no longer even control my own body. I'm a prisoner in my own body.
"The other one screamed before I took him,"
boomed the Jackal, interrupting my thoughts. "Fuck you!" I screamed hysterically into the darkness around me. It was a petty rebellion. I doubted the Jackal even knew what it meant, but I felt better for it all the same. Around me the darkness coalesced. It's alive, I thought. I tried to stifle a scream as an image popped into my head. Thousands of millions of bugs crawling over me in the darkness, biting, scratching, and running, and was banished moments later by the Jackal's next terrible oration.
"You will remain here forever,"
it howled. I know that voice, I thought vaguely. After the voice came the footsteps. I sensed. I could both feel the tremors and hear the steps, hundreds of them around me, pounding the floor in a rapid and terrifying rhythm. Rolling thunder, I thought crazily and laughed. What little sanity I possessed was rapidly being eroded away by the darkness, millions of bugs, rolling thunder, the Jackal and its influence over the cave and consequently those inside it. I doubted if Ashley was still alive, that Samantha and Alex had escaped. I didn't even think that Karen, Vincent, and Jason had escaped alive. Even as I considered this, the Jackal howled again, the flat voice echoing throughout my dark prison.
"They are all dead, as will you be."
The Jackal roared in its expressionless tone, creating a queer, wavering effect that hurt my ears. My throat burned from the lack of moisture, a headache pounded in my head, and my ears throbbed, strangely in time with the footsteps. I'm just rolling thunder, I thought, and laughed crazily. Then, as I considered what the Jackal had said, it can read my thoughts. It was not such a fantastical idea. The Jackal had only ever spoken after I had had a thought. A coincidence? I think not. Well, pardon the pun. I considered the mental connection an idea began to form. I stopped running and emptied my thoughts, banishing the sensory manipulations the Jackal used on me. The footsteps around me intensified, but I heard none of it as I shut down my senses and opened my mind. Then, exposed without the cloak of my previous panicked thoughts, I felt it. The Jackal's mind. It was a colossal, alien thing, like a structure, too gargantuan for the human mind to comprehend. It would dwarf me, swallow my mind whole, and leave me a gibbering wreck if I considered it for too long. It wasn't even natural, let alone human. Thoughts and ideas seemed to be constructed in a fashion that was incomprehensible to the human mind. In a word, the jackal's presence was dark. As I felt its presence wash over me, I steeled myself and sprung the trap. Instantly, before the beast could retreat, I thought of light, a blinding supernova, more light than any human had ever witnessed, a bright inferno of light. I let the mental image expand in my mind and over onto the jackal's colossal presence. I guessed that such a creature had never seen light, or if it had spent so long underground, bathed in darkness, which to control such light, even as an image, would do tremendous harm to it, considering that the jackal's mental abilities far outclassed my own. I was right. The instant the supernova image touched the jackal's presence, a tremendous shriek filled the chamber, immediately overtaking all the phantom footsteps that had so tormented me. I grinned, savagely. That, at least, sounded vaguely human. It felt empowering to know that I had hurt the jackal, probably badly. I heard rushing noises around me and opened my eyes. Impossibly, the virulent darkness was retreating around me. I spun wildly in the grip of the receding darkness. As I moved, I glanced around me. It was a huge chamber, one that extended far into the distance. I saw columns and pillars and carvings, and realized that this really was the jackal's feeding ground, lair that had been the subject of the ominous cave paintings. I had no time to consider that, however. As the final darkness receded, the cave that was lit by light that had no source, my mental light, I thought, exposed its only occupant, and that occupant's slave. Just like that, I saw them. Ashley and the jackal.